Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo, Dr. Shirley and medium Kelly White. Two perspectives, one world. This is Both Sides Now.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Both Sides Now. I'm Dr. Shirley.
And I'm medium Kelly White.
And guess who's in studio with us today?
Hey,
John.
I'm happy to be here, back with y'all.
And he's going to be here every week, right?
Yeah, watching your comments.
Yes.
So great.
And your
so
calls.
much better than me trying to figure it out.
Oh, it's too
Even
much.
my left brain doesn't get it. Technology is like something that's just so out of my realm. I think you've rubbed off on me now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I probably.
I'm Miss Right Brain now. Sorry.
Okay. Does that make me have to be a left brain? Oh, God, please no. The torture.
That'll never happen.
Never.
No, not your right brain. Me being a right brain.
Yeah.
But, we'll leave it the way it is.
Good.
So tell us,
Okay.
Kel, what the fuck is
What's going on?
Yeah.
Well,
Energetically, it's been crazy.
Yes, it has been. But today is a very auspicious day. Really auspicious day. Today, Chiron, which is the wounded healer. Now, ironically, our topic is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Chiron, the wounded healer, goes into Aries today after 50 years.
And
50 years.
Where does Chiron
Chiron
come from? I mean,
is
it's not like
it's-
Zunu from Scientology.
No, but no, no, it's not like that. It's an asteroid, and it's a very powerful. It's as powerful as any of the planets out there.
Really?
As powerful, because
How do they know about it? Like that it's out there?
they just do.
Oh.
That's a left brain
My left
question.
brain wants to
My
know.
right one just says, really shut up. I don't have an answer to that. However, the most important thing
Left
about
brain out there understand what I'm talking about, right?
Well, anyway, Chiron exists, and today it goes into Aries. But what's so important about that is because when we come to this dimension, our souls often get shattered.
Just coming in?
Sometimes just being born. Wow. Sometimes, through all kinds of experiences, and that we'll talk about during this topic today.
Yeah.
But Chiron, this time, is all about the wounded self, and it'll shatter us and put us back together. It's the alchemist of all of the astrology out there.
Oh, wow.
It will put us back together in a healing way. And so if you have had the wound of identity, which is really the big one.
Who hasn't?
It's the big one. It's when we feel we don't exist.
Yeah.
And the symptoms of that would be like, I am nobody, I am not enough. If I don't fit in, I don't exist. They copy other people, a desire to remain unnoticed. It's fear. And so this time, it means this for the next, until 2027, it's about taking responsibility for yourself and identifying who you are and standing up and saying, this is who I am, and taking responsibility for it.
Wow.
And during this period of time, starting now, it will put us in situations to have to deal with whatever pain and trauma we have gone through. So it is a critical time in all of our growths. And in my lifetime, I won't see Chiron again. I don't think you will either.
Wow.
But John, perhaps you will, because it's about every 50 years.
Wow.
It's really powerful.
So when that happens, that's just the energy that's kind of out there.
It's
where
the
we're
energy
gonna get
that's
in
out there.
touch with.
Yes.
It's so interesting because it's almost every single time that someone comes in because someone has done something egregious to them, whether
Right.
it's a parent or a spouse or something like that. I always think to myself initially and then say it when it's appropriate. It's almost like we should send them a thank you note because of that tremendous traumatic event.
Right.
There's the opportunity to heal, and sometimes people just need to be pushed to a really kind of extreme place in order to say, okay, I need to do something.
It's very true.
And it heals a whole bunch of wounds. It's not just, obviously, we don't just deal with whatever they came in from, but I've said that before where,
Oh, yeah.
it's like sending a thank you note to the person. I was going to say,
God.
I was going to pick a nice 4-letter word to the person who
Screwed you over?
Yeah.
I know. It's rough out there. I mean, it's rough. Coming to this dimension is hard.
Tell me about it.
It just is. But this is a really strong period for healing.
Wow.
And I mean the next 7 years.
That's so good to know. Just to kind of have that in the back of your brain to know that it's the opportunity. It's the opportunity for healing, even if things happen that feel very difficult. And that doesn't mean that you don't feel the emotion it brings, whether it's sadness or anger or grieving or disappointment. It just means that it's the opportunity to heal.
I mean, I would say pay attention to what you're feeling. Pay attention. It's not going to go away. I mean, we'll talk about what you can do about this, as we talk about PTSD, because, I mean, why don't you start with that, Shirley?
Well,
talk about
PTSD is kind of like what we call it on Earth, right?
Right.
And it's, as I'm sure a lot of you know, that it stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. But in my field with Dr. Peter Levine in the somatic world, we like to call it post-traumatic stress response. It is truly the response that our body does to an overwhelmed nervous system, because all PTSD is any event that, PTSD is a cluster of symptoms, but any event that overwhelms the nervous system, you run the risk of having PTSD symptoms, because it's the way that our nervous system, our bodies respond to a traumatic event. I mean, if we look at it that way, that's all it is. The problem is that if you don't get help for it, then the symptoms are going to continue, and sometimes they can get worse. And we had put it up on our
Instagram, I think.
Social media. Yeah. John knows about all that. I don't get it. But and so it's, some of the signs and symptoms are efforts to avoid thoughts, avoid certain activities, avoid the area of where the traumatic, experience happened, whether it was a really bad car accident or something like that. Feeling detached, feeling flat.
Feeling anxious.
Yeah, absolutely. Anxiety, flashbacks, where
nightmares.
Right. I think nightmares are like flashbacks when we sleep, right?
Yeah, sure.
It can be, yeah. But it's like when the scene just shows up in your mind without you even thinking about it. Difficulty with sleep, irritability, hypervigilance, difficulty concentrating, intrusive thoughts, an exaggerated startle response.
Oh, yeah.
I have that.
Yeah.
So these are all the symptoms that you could be having that could be due to PTSD or PTS. What did I say? PTSR.
Response. Yeah.
PTSR. And what can cause PTSD? It could be one big event, like we all really think about it. Like a big car accident or an assault or something like that. But it could also be many misattunements, little misattunements ever since you were when you were young, that cause you to have kind of chronic stress.
Well, I had one the other day I had an interesting case the other day, and it was a woman who I've seen for many years who was married to a personality disorder. And we were talking about PTSD, and living with a personality disorder, borderline in particular, it can cause that constant. You don't know when you're going to get attacked, and that is constantly in PTSD.
Oh, because you're living kind of like as if you were walking
on eggshells all the time.
Or landmines, and so you don't know when you're going to hit one, and so you're kind of in this fight or flight.
Yes, fight or flight.
All the time, which certainly will cause you to have PTSD symptoms.
It's huge with personality disorders, living with one.
Yeah.
Another one that I had this week, which was really interesting, is I was doing a reading for a woman who was about 35, and she seemed fine. Everything was fine. And all of a sudden, I just kept hearing this word, judgment. Were you judged? And it just came right out. And she said, all of a sudden, she starts sobbing. And she said, I had some horrible bullying, and bullying will bring up PTSD really badly, too.
Absolutely. And then anything that triggers that, if you haven't worked through, I think bullying as a kid is one of the most damaging experiences that kids can have, because your social group is just such an important part.
Right.
Especially bullying, especially in high school, when your social group is really, really important developmentally.
Yeah.
But anything that triggers it, I have someone that I work with where, unfortunately, she's working with a boss who I believe has a personality disorder, and so it's triggering that sense of helplessness, of when you got bullied.
Right.
And as I just came back since you did the show last week, spending a week with Dr. Peter Levine and Dr. Bessel Vanderkolk. So
How was that?
In heaven. It was up at Esalen, which is beautiful. If anybody ever is in California, around Big Sur area, middle of California. But it was unbelievable. I have so much information to share, particularly about PTSD and trauma.
Okay.
It's Peter talked about it, that trauma is about heartbreak and gut wrench. And doesn't it feel like that?
And I call it shattering of the soul.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about that a little bit, because that fascinates me.
Well, you want to continue with the
Well,
because that's fascinating.
So, and he says trauma is one of the most powerful energetic experiences, which goes right with what you're saying about shattering the soul.
Yeah.
Because that's what it can feel like. And when you're living in this kind of traumatic state is what it is, because when we get traumatized, we live in a constricted state, and we don't realize that actually all our muscles and everything is constricted. So in my work, when I work somatically, you do little releases, and then the body goes right back into constriction. It's, for every expansion, there's a constriction, and so you have to expect that. But yeah, you're living in a constricted state, which is like living in fight or flight.
Wow. Well, and then from my end of it, spiritually, what it does is PTSD actually destroys innocence. And in its place, it constructs a loss of faith. And then in a place of trust, all of a sudden it constructs doubt and mistrust.
Yeah.
And then shame replaces self-esteem.
Absolutely. Right? And shame is one of the most powerful states.
Absolutely.
Not in a good way, and to get out of and heal from.
And then another one is delusionment replaces achievement. I mean, you just kind of give up on life.
Yeah, because it creates like this incredible helpless, and feeling powerful is the exact opposite of helplessness, and so that's the goal. To feel, that life force, that powerful kind of more sense of self that was taken away with trauma.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the whole idea is to pull yourself back together again, get all the pieces of that shattered self for your soul and put it back together again.
And how do you do that from a spiritual standpoint?
Well, that's a great question. I'll tell you, it really does all come down to spirituality for me. It's having a belief and having faith again. So there's many ways to start, but one of them is that you validate the trauma that had happened to you. So it just starts with the validation. This happened to me. So you start with that one. I mean, you can keep a journal of what happened, even if that would help, whether it's physical or emotional or sexual or relational or self-esteem or financial or occupational. Something happened here. And then you start with finding somebody perhaps that you can identify with who's already doing a practice of spirituality. That would really help. Find out somebody, even if you see it online, or somebody that you can identify with that's practicing spirituality, meaning having faith.
So that could be maybe a meditation group.
Absolutely.
Or it could be just a group.
Meditation group. It could be just a spiritual being out there that's putting out positive information. That's really important. So I would definitely surround yourself with that. And then another way is really to start your own practice of spirituality. And what that means is having forgiveness for whatever has happened to you. So whatever has happened, whoever the person or perpetrator was, if you can do it in person, great. Often you can't. And what I've discovered is and it's very powerful to do this, is you imagine you're on the other side and you're with this person and you're having a dialogue. You're telling this person everything that happened on the other side. It's safe. It's a safe place to go. I do that often. I mean, listen, we've all had our situations here.
Absolutely,
and,
yeah.
What have I learned from it? I've learned a lot from it, actually. Yeah. We're all here. We will all get hit at some point in this lifetime, or several times, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so how do we recover? Recovery is important. But what I do is I will have dialogues with people that have really, wronged me, if you will.
Yeah.
And they really have caused deep problems there.
Yeah.
And I'll have conversations on the other side. It took me years to be able to even have a conversation on the other side with somebody.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I can do it now pretty easily.
Yeah. Well, I
but
think
from a deeper place. I'm coming from a very deep place at this point.
I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is to have
forgiveness.
Obviously an honest conversation, which includes this is what you did and this is how it made me feel, because so many people want to skip the feeling part about it, and I never feel angry with my, perpetrators. How can you not? It's
please.
Such an important. I feel that you need to give the emotions the respect of validating them, and then you get through them, and then the forgiveness can happen because you see them for the human beings that they are. But without that step of actually feeling the anger, that doesn't mean you have to react to the anger. It's just validating the anger, because how can you not be angry at someone who
Right, and you can
did
be
something to
angry.
you.
That's fine. That's all. You should be angry.
Well, getting in touch with
get
that
in
anger
touch with
doesn't
it,
mean that you
right.
become this angry person that can't get past it.
No, and exactly. Well, it's really interesting. There was an article in Psychology Today about bullying and how it causes PTSD, and it said that on average, the average person can get through it in about 5 years. And I read that and I was like,
How?
"What? Who wrote this?"
That's stupid.
It's just not. It's not correct.
Yeah,
No.
no.
And if you're an empath, it could take a lifetime. It could take years.
Well, and not to mention the idea that some things in life could trigger that feeling again.
Right.
And that's okay too, because that's what will happen. And those kind of articles that give a timeline, can cause people, run the risk of causing people to feel, what's wrong with me?
Right.
I thought I had worked through it and now I'm being triggered. And of course, and I see progress in how often we get triggered, not so much
Right.
whether we still get triggered, because we all come from something.
Right.
So maybe you're getting triggered instead of once a week, once a month. Maybe you're getting
that's good
triggered,
progress,
right?
right.
Exactly. Maybe you're
Right.
getting triggered once every 6 months, or God, 2 years ago I would have responded this way, but now I'm feeling that I'm responding this different way. So it's so
Right.
important to look at progress and how often things are happening, not whether they're happening still or not.
And here's another thing. When you're dealing with a forgiveness for the person who perpetrated you, somebody who really did you harm, look at it from where they are. I could say probably not too far. Right. Probably. Always gives myself a good sense there.
Well, and that's just it. It's, seeing people for the human beings that they are, but pulling yourself out of that kind of child perspective, particularly if there's been a lot of trauma in your childhood, from that child perspective, and realize you're an adult, you have agency, and you get to walk away, whether it's literally or metaphorically, if you want to.
Right.
But we go, whenever we get triggered, we go back into that old, especially if our PTSD started as kids, you know.
Right.
It was so interesting. Bessel was talking about how how trauma, particularly if it happens when you're a kid, it affects the cerebellum part of the brain, cerebellum and the brainstem, which are the two biggest part of the brain, and they basically, it's about heart rate, and it's about, I have it, hold on.
Does the heart rate increase?
Well, it hits the core of the housekeeping functions of the brain, which is digestion, sleeping, breathing, which is why when someone comes in the office, it's important to ask questions whether they have gastrointestinal issues or sleep issues or lung issues, because that's the part, the cerebellum takes care of our involuntary kind of life needs, which is why if as a child your caregivers were the source of your misery, the person will engage in behaviors to try and regulate their internal housekeeping. So they'll overeat, or they'll have sex with strangers, or they're, overdrink in a way to kind of regulate themselves, because the body isn't telling them what's going on. It isn't telling them that they're not able to kind of feel, oh, I'm hungry right now, or I feel satiated, or I'm, it's so interesting that way, where it really affects kind of these very primitive parts of the brain. And another thing that was said is our default mode. Like they did research studies where people who didn't come from a lot of trauma, the default mode, like when you're sitting at a red light or in line or whatever, is the parts in the brain that light up with idle time is the you-ness parts. Like what makes you you? What's your favorite color? Your favorite movie? Just who we are, right? For people that have been traumatized, everything shuts down. And so there's no you there.
Well, it's the identity wound.
Yes, that's exactly the
So
same
we were
wound.
saying.
Yeah.
Everything shuts down.
Everything shuts down.
And then I don't have a right to exist.
Yeah, there's no me there. Yeah, it's fascinating how, from an energetic spiritual standpoint, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Then,
Just different language, but it's the same thing.
Different language. Yeah.
And John, you had said earlier something about the Chinese, what they do.
Yeah, they take a pot if it gets damaged, right? And so when they're gluing the pieces back together, they use gold. So it becomes a masterpiece. So it's just showing you that, brokenness can turn into a masterpiece.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter actually always referenced that. It's an old Japanese kind of proverb or something like that?
Yeah, I have to look it up. I'm going to post it on the Instagram for everybody. And I just want to mention that we are getting calls and we are getting comments. So that's great. So whenever you guys are ready to open it up for that, I want to let you know about that. We went live on Instagram just for a few minutes, just so everyone could see you guys.
Nice. Well,
So
hello.
we're bringing some new people.
So let me just give just before we go, because
Yeah.
I really want people to have the information, if that's okay with you, with what I learned last week.
Okay.
So in trauma, it's not so much about memories. It's about making narrow associations, and we get stuck there. So, for example, if I get assaulted at the bank becomes dangerous, And so it's important to help the client make new associations. Like when they're talking about the trauma, if as the therapist I have, I give them some support or some touch, you always ask if you can touch. So now they're talking about the trauma, but they're feeling supported because they can feel my foot on their foot or they can feel my hand on their shoulder. And so now that's a new association that the brain is making. It's in trauma, the brain has narrowed to just anticipate threat. And so you're just anticipating that. And you can imagine, which of course, we've all had that, living that way, where you just can't be free in the moment. For example, if we hadn't worked on our trauma and stuff, we'd be sitting here anticipating threat when the door's closed, no one's coming in. John is our wonderful friend. I love you. There's no reason to in the here and now. But the brain doesn't know that because it's living in this narrowed kind of, the world is dangerous and anything can happen at any time. And while that's true, living that way doesn't make it
as you
fun.
said that, who does that? Borderlines live that way.
Yeah. Well, we'll
So
do
what
a
do you think?
show.
We'll have to do a show about that. About they must constantly be re-triggered themselves.
Well, because usually the damage in borderline happens between 0 and 2, so it's pre-verbal, and it's when the person that you're attached to, many times your mother, is the same person that scares you.
Yeah, that
And
makes sense.
so then, it makes sense that you would be living in this kind of
Fight or flight
all the time. Yeah. And when you're traumatized, you can't imagine a future different than your past.
That's very true, and that's where spirituality has to come in, I believe.
Absolutely. So, some, when you're traumatized, particularly at a young age, it affects the sense, what you talked about spiritually, that, the existence piece?
That you do not exist.
That
You
you do
cease
not
to
exist.
exist.
So it's important, one quick tool, when you're feeling it, is to just squeeze your muscles.
Oh, that's a good one.
And touch your skin, squeeze your muscles, your arms, your legs, and that helps you really kind of come into your body and realize, oh, I've got boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a nice, quick little tool that you can do. Also, because trauma affects the cerebellum, it could affect your balance. So like with kids, they get on the balance beam, the trampoline, because they're helping, their balance, regulate the balance. You can do, you can actually ask a child, how would you redo the story if they tell you a story? There were a lot of kids that were talking about 9/11, and when they drew pictures, they drew trampolines at the bottom of the people falling from, this one little kid had drawn a picture of the towers and people, because he had witnessed everything. But he had redone the story for the trampoline, and that can help too.
Wow.
Yeah. Yoga, because anything that puts you in touch with your body, Tai Chi, you're doing slow motion movements, and it helps you realize, I have a body, I have boundaries. Particularly also with trauma, as kids, people are crossing your boundaries, and even trauma as an adult, a car accident, an assault, it's a crossing of your boundary. Yeah, and a very kind of a serious one and a jarring one. Yeah. So, and Rick Hansen, if anybody wants to look him up, he has the Buddha brain. We've talked about him before, haven't we, John? He has a book, and it says holding a new experience, in this case when we're working with PTSD, a positive experience for 10 to 17 seconds, and repeating that over and over can start to change your brain.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
17 seconds, okay.
Yeah. So like when you feel good,
Yeah.
just really kind of hold on to that or notice it, and then if it goes away, that's fine. And then, when it comes back,
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
So there you have it. I hope we've helped you a little bit with what PTSD is. I'm fascinated with how
The spirituality
of it is, and how it really kind of goes hand in hand with the brain and how it affects us here on Earth.
Well, it is mind, body, and soul.
It
I mean, you have to deal with all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
All of them here.
So do we have any questions we can answer or any phone calls we can take?
Well, we do. We have some comments that are coming in, and Lynn was asking earlier about somatic.
Lynn.
She was asking about somatic experiencing and how that can heal and help heal PTSD. So you kind of went over that a little bit when you were talking about.
Yeah, with PTSD is an event happens, it overwhelms the nervous system, and we tend to energetically also get stuck in that, and we don't finish the nervous system response. And so that's what SC helps, is you really slow it down, and you don't really work with what happened, you work with what's going on in my body, so I'm tense. So then I would either have the person wait and see what happens next, and many times the tenseness goes away. The problem is that when something happens, we get stuck there, like at the top of the, the loop, and we don't let it come back down. So that's how we work with somatic experiencing. It's really kind of body-oriented therapy.
And then she was mentioning earlier, Kelly, we were talking about on the last show about chakras and grounding. So would that be a part of grounding?
Be definitely a part of grounding. Yeah, I mean, especially when you were talking about like Tai Chi or any yoga, anything that would ground you, taking your shoes off, walking around, and really forgiving yourself, forgiving anybody else. Forgiveness is how we get to the next level, if you will.
Yeah. Feeling the effects of it, working through that, and then getting to forgiveness. Yeah,
because it's not serving you anymore to hold on to it.
No.
It just isn't. And Chiron right now, the wounded healer, is going to, find some new ways to shake us up again, to put us back together. Because as I was saying last week, it's an old door is closing. That was Chiron and Pisces, the old door closing, and now the new one in Aries is opening. So we have a new door to look into, which is going to be an extraordinary time for everybody.
Wow. So are we going to have to send Chiron some thank you notes?
Yes. Yeah. As a matter of fact,
after he shakes us up. And
well, interesting enough, as I've said to a lot of people, therapists out there are going to be really busy. Divorce lawyers will be busy.
Wow.
A lot of change going on.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of things coming to the surface.
I think it's important just to get back just for one moment with what Lynn was asking. Every time you tell a story, the new story becomes the most current memory. I mean, that's the way the brain works, right?
Okay.
So, because the mind is very fluid. So that's where the intervention is too. Because if you're able to help people tell the traumatic memory in more of an adjusted way, like if you could have done anything, what would you have liked to have done? Then that becomes the new memory too. What you wanted to do but couldn't is part now of the new memory.
That's good.
Yeah.
And Christina's asking if we could talk a little bit more about forgiveness. She's commenting all the way from Germany.
Oh, hi, Christina.
Hi, Christina.
Okay. Is this my Christina out there?
She says, much love, Kelly.
Oh, I love you. I love you. I love Christina. So forgiveness. So, okay. So we forgive to forgive. We forgive for ourselves so we can move on. And some of the traumas that people will have had, would be so egregious, you'd think, how in the world do I forgive that? And I'll tell you, you do. You just do. How it is you go into this deep place of, I would put myself in heaven on the other side, basically. And as if you're talking to the person and telling this person, not as if, you are talking to their soul, this is what you did to me. And it changed the course of my life, no matter what it is. I mean, in some cases, it really does change the course of people's lives.
Oh, God, yeah.
And you just view it from wherever their soul on the other side is. So they may not be where you are. They may not be in a place of forgiveness. And that's okay. Or owning it. They may not be. And it's so egregious when that happens, I have to say. But they're just... I always think that they're just young souls or immature, or they're just not there yet.
Yeah. I think,
and eventually they will get there because they'll come back and come back and come back
and
the cycle. And that's how I feel. Oops, there goes my water. That's how I feel about that.
But that's part of their journey, and that's how I see it too when you talk about forgiveness. For me, forgiveness is not personalizing it. Yes, they did it to me, but they did it to me because of their own stuff.
Yeah.
So it's almost like giving them back their stuff.
Yeah.
And, and of course not putting myself in the middle of it anymore, but that's their stuff.
It's their stuff.
And then if we look at it from the soul lessons perspective, which we've gone into before, which is kind of difficult when you're in the midst of it, but it's that a lot of the people who play your enemy in life are usually the people who love you the most, who signed up to play that part in order to teach you to grow.
Yeah. Greatest teacher.
I know it's hard. It's really hard.
That's a hard.
It's a really hard one.
But you know what? I mean, that almost feels like it's the next step after you've after you've validated what happened, how it felt, forgive them and depersonalize it and say, okay, this is your stuff that I just happen to be the recipient of, and then to get to that point. Oh, and by the way, you know, thank you for choosing to be an asshole in this lifetime
And I will
to help
say
me.
this, and I will say,
Hello me.
that's very true. But what I will say is that I really have recovered from many wounds. You can recover from wounds,
Most
and you
definitely.
just keep going. But you can recover. So you have to know that out there.
Yeah, not that it's easy at all, but you can recover. Yeah. Well, if you couldn't, then, you know, first of all, our profession would be completely obsolete.
Absolutely.
And the idea of, you know, this idea of just being helpless, oh, I experienced what I experienced and I can't do anything about it.
Right.
I mean, and you can go from feeling helpless to feeling in a sense of empowerment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to mention that when folks call in, 818-570-5085, that you please mute your listening device and just talk through your telephone. Please do not call in on speakerphone. It makes it very difficult to hear you. But we do have a call that's pending right now from 760-408. We're going to bring you on the line. So just one moment.
Also, John, right, it may keep ringing because we don't have the ability to put people on hold.
Correct.
So if it just keeps ringing, just hang up and keep calling. We're sorry, but that's the way the system is, right?
And we're open the lines now. So go ahead and call in at 818-570-5085. And here's our first call from 760-408.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi there.
Thank
Hi,
you.
how are you guys?
Good. What's your name?
My name's Lori.
Where are you calling from, Lori?
I'm actually in Long Beach at the moment.
Nice.
But I live in Joshua Tree.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love Joshua Tree.
Now, that's a very spiritual place.
Yes, it is.
I used to live in Long Beach.
Oh, it is.
But it's a very spiritual place. Yeah.
Yeah.
How can we, Lori, what's your birth date? There's a lot of sadness there.
It's April 16th, 1974.
Okay. 1974. Okay. April 16, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
There's a lot. You've had a lot of loss and a lot of sadness around you.
Is there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm going through, like, major life changes. I guess I just need to...
Well, let me tell you a little bit something about that, and we can talk about that. You come in this lifetime for major changes. You actually do. And you are a very spiritual being. You came in to learn about changes for relationships, I would say. You've come in to learn about loss. You've a lot of changes. You touch everybody. I'm not sure what you do, but you must be creative because you come in with, and there's an angelic realm about you. You come in, what do you do? You're a creator. What do you do?
I do hair color.
Okay. Okay, because I saw
very creative.
I saw like something really colorful around or creative around you.
So, yeah, I'm a hair color.
But by the way, my favorite, truly an art form.
Yes.
But you would come in for great change in this lifetime over and over and over. I bet you're a change artist, in other words. You can do change. Some people can't. Some people have trouble with change. But you actually can do it. Does that make sense to you?
And I'm actually I'm really really craving some big changes in my life. I just don't know exactly what I need to do next.
Okay, so tell me, I'm really bad with math. Well, how old are you?
I'm 44. Almost 44.
Oh, this is the perfect time. Okay, so you're calling the perfect time, the perfect person for this. 44 and 45 and 46 are when the major changes occur in a person's life. So it starts at 44, so that's where you are, and you come in with knowing and anticipating that there would be great change. 44, and then at 45, a lot more change comes in. At 46, you've kind of set your course. And the next big change is 54, 55, 56.
And the interesting thing too is that you work a lot with the crown chakra as hair
Let's
colorist.
talk about that. That's a major
God.
deal.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right because you're dealing with people's stuff all the time. So maybe you pick up people's stuff because you have the ability to transmute it because you make them look so good and you probably calm people down, yada yada yada. However, I would think that it would take a toll on you at some point.
I think it has.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I have.
Yeah. I mean, if you're thinking about changing your career or doing something else, that'll probably happen in the next sooner than later. But what I will say is this, that you have a grandmother around you, and there was a lot of heartache and pain around that arena. I want to say with the grandmother, a lot of heartache and pain, if that makes sense. And there's a what is it with you and snakes?
Ooh.
I know, sorry about that, but I just had a vision of one. What does that mean for you?
Snakes.
Mm-hmm. That must
I'm
mean
not sure.
Okay, then it would mean transformation. Then
Or
then you-
Kundalini?
could be Kundalini
Yeah.
energy. It could be a lot of change too. Snakes are transformation. I would say look forward to massive changes this year for you.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, it'll happen. It'll happen. I mean, I'm just hearing 1 foot at a time, and it's funny because I almost feel like you can fly, which it sounds like a really weird thing, but unless you tell me you fly a lot, you have a lot of energy around you to do things. So you will make a lot of changes, and they're making sure that they're positive changes for you, okay? Make sure you pick good people around you. That's going to be imperative for you.
Yeah.
Okay? Nobody with drugs and alcohol. Got to be really good.
Do you have very vivid
Okay.
dreams? Vivid dreams? Or do you
What's that?
remember your dreams?
You know what's weird? I don't really remember my dreams
So
anymore.
she's doing a
I used
lot
to
of
always
work on the
remember
other
my
side,
dreams.
then.
I don't
Probably.
remember them anymore.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah, because
And
that's
I
why I
don't
was
know
thinking about flying, like astral travel, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would make sense.
Okay.
Well, anyway, Lori, thanks for calling.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Keep
thank you.
keep in touch with us. You know,
Yeah.
send us about how
I
your
will.
year's going. Send us either a
Yeah.
thing on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. We'd love to
Definitely.
hear about how your year's going.
And thank you for your patience in
Absolutely.
calling in. We saw you call
Thank
several times. We're glad we got to your call. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, you take
have
care.
a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.
Bye.
Yeah. A lot of change
Wow.
coming up. And interesting enough, in this during this time, we will see a lot of change for people, but it's going to be change on the inside.
Yeah, and change doesn't necessarily
for most people.
initially feel good until
Right.
you've worked through it and come to
Yes.
the other side. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of thank yous. Chris, actually, Katie is saying thank you for doing this show. Not enough people talk about trauma and healing and forgiveness, so thank you.
Oh, thanks,
You're
Katie.
so
I appreciate
welcome.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really important topic, and as we
really
get in
is.
for the next several years, this is going to be the topic.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
can't walk away from this one anymore. In fact, anybody that's been abused or whatever, even the abusers won't be able to walk away. Now, how's that for a twist there? They won't be able to. Something will come up. Anybody out there who's had this, they'll know. Something will come up.
If we look at it from the perspective of we're not born this way, it really has to do with the environment. There may be a predisposition in the brain, and from the earth standpoint, and karmic stuff from a spiritual standpoint. But we become who we become because of experiences that we've had,
Definitely.
whether in a past life or in this life. And so part of it, if we can view it from that, you know, I don't have to be around you if I don't care to, but I can also say, okay, but you've become that way for reasons. And, you know, it's kind of like, what is that? Don't judge people before you walked in their shoes,
Oh,
because
yeah,
everybody has had
for sure.
a very
Right.
difficult life. Even the
Right.
bullies were bullied at some point. You know, all the research
Right.
shows that. And again, it doesn't mean I have to tolerate it, but when you view it from that understanding
Yeah.
piece, you know, I think it helps with the forgiveness that
The compassion,
that is,
yeah.
yeah,
Right.
from the compassion, having self-compassion to walk away, and having compassion for them, for this is their journey.
Yeah.
I
Right.
want nothing to do with you, but this is your journey,
If
and
the-
I'll, you know.
I was going to say, if the healing can be done on this side, in this dimension, if the healing can be done here, it's so powerful. I
Yeah.
can't even tell
Yeah.
you. I mean, every once in a while you'll get a bully that you can say, look, you bullied me. Every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah, where you're able to
Say it
that.
and that they can listen. Every
Yeah.
once in a while it does happen. And if not, it'll happen on the other side.
And we've talked before about the soul being a container of experiences. So from lifetime to lifetime, a container
Yes.
of all these experiences. So
But it's so wonderful the way that you talked about it's a shattered, you know, when we go through traumatic experiences, it shatters the soul.
Yeah.
And this visual of, you know, when you get to that place of forgiveness, it's almost like you're gifting yourself that shattered piece
Yeah.
and bringing it back and
And-
integrating it back.
Right.
Yes.
Well, that's
to
why I
yourself.
like the gold. I love the gold
Right.
of that because you really do come back a masterpiece.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, we are all going to get hit and wounded.
right.
I know I teach this class on the other side. I'm
Oh, I know you
positive.
do. I know you do.
I'm like, look, this is what's going to happen.
And
Peter-
speaking, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say. And speaking of the other side, we're getting some questions about that.
Oh,
so,
please.
Okay,
But
let me
go
just
ahead.
finish
Yes,
with this. Well,
sure.
well, Peter says, you know, trauma is a fact of life, but it doesn't have to be a life sentence. And that is
Right.
just so true.
So
isn't it?
true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Doesn't have to be.
So this kind of goes along with the call that we had earlier. If a person does not remember their dreams, does that mean they're doing work on the other side? And why wouldn't we remember doing work on the other side?
Oh, let me take that one, John.
Okay.
I think you should.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes, we do work on the other side. We do a lot of work on the other side. I think we take classes. I think we go to meet with other people on the other side. We spend a lot of time on the other side. Sometimes we remember when we sleep. Sometimes we remember. Sometimes we don't. But it's all for reparative. Everything is for reparative. I had a dream last night that I was flying, and my brother actually gave me a plane and said, "Here, just take me in this plane." And it was pretty. I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I started flying, and I'm like, I've never really done this, but wow, this is pretty cool. And I was thinking of the 405, actually going, "Oh, wouldn't this be great?" And as I'm flying
over the 405,
and all of a sudden I couldn't see where I was going, but I was still flying, and I wasn't scared. It was really interesting. And I said, "No, I know, I'll figure it out or not." And I wasn't worried. And when I landed, wherever it was, my mom was there.
Oh.
It was amazing. I love that. That one will stay with me forever, I hope, because it was really a good one. But anyway, we do have dreams. If we're not dreaming, well, we always dream, but we're always on the other side doing work too.
Which kind of brings up a question about depression and people, how they sleep all the time. Do you think they're actually connecting with the other side to heal more? Or do you think it's life force energy?
It's life force energy.
Okay.
It's life force energy. If you're depressed, it could be from PTSD, actually. Very much so.
Absolutely.
It could be from a lot of things, but PTSD is a big one for depression.
Yeah.
And it's getting your vital life force back up again and again. How would you do that? Through spirituality, through yoga, actually taking the time to go through what happened to you. Make a list. This is what happened to me. Bring it to somebody who can validate it for you if you can. A therapist, a good friend, but somebody you trust, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, getting validated for those things is really important. And that's beginning, to me, of the journey of healing.
Absolutely. And being, as honest as possible. They do say depression is when we turn anger inward. And so, that certainly people who are depressed, again, there might be a predisposition in the brain, but all the studies of epigenetics show that the environment decides whether this predisposition gets turned on or stays dormant. Right. So if someone is depressed, and I'm talking even from personal experience, there were a lot of misattunements in your childhood.
Right. Is that where the mother does not attune or the father doesn't attune?
Yeah. The people that are your caregivers, the people that are supposed to take care of you, misattune to what your needs are. And certainly a parent can't guess, what you need at all times, but it's the curiosity of the parent who has the patience to go, "Honey, what do you need? How can I help you?" and not shame the child for having an emotion and that kind of stuff, which we all make mistakes. I mean, I've told my daughter she's got free therapy. I will pay for her therapy forever. That is, I made the mistakes, certainly not intentionally, but I know that I made them, obviously. And so I think every parent, we do a college fund. Every parent should do a therapy fund and pay for their child's therapy.
That's a great.
Yes.
Just as I'm so sorry that I did this. I know I did stuff, and I want to help you heal.
It's so important because it eventually comes out later in life if it's not addressed in adolescence or in college.
Yeah, and the stuff that you think you've worked on, like I wanted to do everything opposite of what my mom did, to Sydney, but the stuff that I didn't know existed. I did without even knowing it. Wow. And so so it's that awareness piece is so important. So with depression, it's finding a way to get your life energy, your life force back.
And I'm going to tell you this. There's a great movie that I just watched on Netflix. It's called Heal. In fact, James Van Prague told me to watch it. HEAL, and it's a documentary on healing and different forms of healing. And you know what I thought? I thought, who should have been in it? James should have been in it for sure. And the other one is Dr. Robert Gramlich. Oh, thanks. But Dr. Robert Gramlich should have been in it too.
It takes a village. It's not just a therapist. I mean, we have this wonderful, group of people that help us. We have a homeopathic doctor, MD. We have, of course, Kelly that I use all the time for the spiritual work. And then we have a gal who's going to be on our show in March who does family consultation therapy, which is amazing. Just out of this world. And she does
you guys will love that show.
Oh, my God. If you have one session, it's a 2-hour family consultation session. One session with her can heal so many things. And she works on Skype, so we can put her information up. But she'll be here next month. But so it takes a village. It's different people using different healing modalities, not just one way.
Right.
So we're having a question from Diane. She's asking, when someone doesn't want to keep going to counseling to rehash the trauma, what advice would you give?
Okay. Again, for me, go into some sort of spirituality. Do meditation. I'd definitely start with meditation. I would do yoga. I'd go out running. I'd go out Tai Chi. Something where you're participating in life for yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in therapy to do that. Not at all. I understand not wanting to bring it up. I get it.
Well, but that's where talk therapy has its limitations because at some point you talk about it over and over again. I think understanding it and finding the source is important, but then what do you do? So to answer that question, I would say find a therapist that works either somatically, with the body, or EMDR is another modality that isn't just talking. In fact, with somatic experiencing and EMDR, you hardly ever talk about the actual thing that happened.
Right.
You're just working with what your body and your mind is doing in this moment because of what happened.
There are so many modalities of healing now.
Absolutely.
Right? Find something that really you like, something that's interesting to you. I find that if you have an interest in something, it really helps.
Yeah, yeah.
Read books. A lot of good books out there on things.
A lot of great books out there.
One of my favorite books is Living with Joy. Have you heard of this one? Oh my gosh, my favorite. So what is her name? Roman is her last name. Sonoya.
It's called Living with Joy?
Yes, Sanaya Roman, Roman, I think it's Sonoya.
Okay.
Living with Joy.
Yeah.
I'll look for that
It's
one.
really good because it just gets your positiveness going. It was a channeled book. It's amazing. I love this book.
Wow. All right. I'm gonna look
Yes,
it up.
you're right. SANAYA, Roman.
Yeah, it's a great book. So there are all kinds of ways. You don't need to be in therapy, but there are some great ways to do it.
It's important.
To feel good about yourself and start living again.
It's important that if you come from a lot of trauma to do therapy, but again, not just talk therapy, because that does have its limitations. And if you go on the Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute, I think it's .com or .org website, you can find a practitioner in your area, and hopefully there will be one.
Right. Yeah. And Diane was our caller from last week during the chakra show.
Oh,
yes.
Hi, Diane.
Yes,
Okay.
So good to have her call in or comment in again.
Yeah.
These calls and comments, they're coming in really quick. So we're taking more comments than calls at the moment because when we get to the calls, it looks like you'd already hang up. So if you want to call back next week, we'd appreciate it because we're going to be here next week. And already we're at 12:46, so we got to wrap up shortly.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
do.
Yeah.
So we do appreciate your comments about what we're talking about, and also if you have any ideas for for shows that we have coming up.
Absolutely.
I know we have James Van Prague is going to be a guest too. In the next few weeks.
That will be wonderful.
This will be fun, and Carrie will be a guest.
Yeah. So any topics that you have that we can help in any way. I mean, we hope that these tools, talking about it and sharing some tools are helpful. It's so important in PTSD. Know that you're living in the past, and so anything that you can do to keep yourself in the present, grounding, what you talked about, Kelly, noticing your feet on the ground, orienting to the moment. So what are you hearing right now in this moment? What are you seeing right now in this moment? What are you feeling in this moment? We'll put you in the moment. Sharon Salzberg has a beautiful loving kindness meditation. When you were talking about forgiveness, I did it one time, and it's so simple. It's just 3 sentences. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe. You say it to yourself, you say it to someone you love, but there's one piece where you say it to someone who's hurt you. You just imagine them in your mind.
Right.
I did it. I can't tell you how powerful it felt. And I kind of, did it a little bit, but it's similar to what you're saying about that forgiving the person.
Absolutely. And know that these things take time. It's a journey.
Yeah.
I know that sounds so cliche. It's not a destination, but
it's true.
It really is a journey here. I mean, there'll be some really good destinations, and then there'll be some more difficult ones, and then you just keep going. But don't give up. Don't give up on your healing. Don't give up, period.
Yeah.
Keep going. We worked really hard in this to be here, to actually have a body and to be in this dimension. Right, John? You know that.
It's a daily process.
It's a daily process. We worked hard on the other side to be here. So don't forget that piece. And, really, warrior up. You're your own best warrior.
Absolutely.
You say angel up.
Angel up. Well, yeah, but I mean,
that.
angel up or warrior. I mean, Kelly means warrior.
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yes.
And it's so funny because you're one of the sweetest and even-keeled people I know.
Yes, she
So
is.
you can be a warrior and be, sometimes we have this idea, this almost like narrow association. If you're a warrior, you're walking around the world like this. But look she's a warrior.
I am.
You know, and you're the
Truly.
sweetest person I know.
That's so sweet.
It's true.
Thanks, Cheryl.
So true.
Thank you.
Right?
I second that real quick.
So, yeah. So whatever it takes to kind of help you on your journey.
Yeah.
On your journey.
Try to stay present.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
the most important part, because
Yes.
you know, if we're in the
Right on.
past, then we're, you know, if we're in the
I
future,
love
we're
that.
worrying. If we're in the past, we're,
Right.
you
You're
know,
regretting.
regretting
Yeah.
and
You know, and if you need a moment to just be, like sometimes when I'm feeling real either depressed or really angry or shitty, I'll just go, you know what, I'm going to give myself permission today to feel this way.
Oh, yeah.
And if I want to be depressed and, you know, cry on the couch and watch Long Lost Family or one of those shows,
Yeah.
it just makes me sob.
like Schitt's Creek.
Right? Well, that makes me laugh. I love that show. But
Yeah.
you know, and so I just give myself permission, and then I say, okay, tomorrow is a different day.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
sometimes you just have to give yourself permission, just feel what you're feeling. You know, but when I do that, I know that okay, I can let myself do it because I know that tomorrow I'm going to be done with it. You know, just for
Right.
the moment. So
All right.
thank you.
Thank
for
you, everybody.
listening. Yeah, thank you so much.
Have a
and we will
great week, and pay attention to Chiron in Aries.
we'll see you next
See
week.
you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Both Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo Dr. Shirley and Kelly White.